When I did the grades for the quarter mark, I did it slightly before the quarter mark. And I do that because I like to get out ahead of TSN, Sportsnet, and all them, and anybody else doing any kind of letter grades thing where I read it and I go, okay, I don't want to be influenced by anything anybody else, so I'm doing mine now, even though technically the halfway mark is sometime, I would think next week is where we'll actually hit the halfway point. There are a couple of teams that are at 41 games, and I feel like, it's close enough that I can do this. There's nothing that's going to change for a team that's played 38 games to game 41 that's going to cause letter grades to change for them. So what I've done on the board here is I've got in black the points that a team is projected to get. And then with the brown fine tip marker, what I did was I put up the points they had last year. And then that's how many more points or less points they might get next season. Or this season compared to last season, I should say. We're not going to get into next season until July. For Boston, they currently are at 116 points. So I've done this by standings. We're going to go through the East first and then the West. And we'll go from the top of the West, which is Boston, to the bottom of the East, which is San Jose. It's still weird to me to say San Jose is worst in the West, but that's where they are. And if these guys can pull a St. Louis this year, good luck with that. I don't see how. All right, Boston, though, 116 points is what they're on pace for. They had 107 last year, which would be 9 better than last year. I'm going to give them a B. Now, I would love to give Boston an A grade based on this season. I would love to do that. But their play over the last month has been kind of miserable. Now, they got a shutout win last night over Buffalo. We'll see if they can continue it. But for me, that's a B. Now, Toronto, this is a grade that's kind of split here. So I'm going to go ahead and split that grade. I might as well do it in black, because if I do it in black, it'll definitely show up better on the camera. So I'm going to trace over this one in black. There's a B for Boston. And there you go. And then the dash here is before and after Sheldon Keefe, because it feels like it's two different teams. So before Keefe, it's maybe a C minus, right? And since Keefe took over, it's a solid A. So Toronto has gone from the C minus of Babcock to an A under Keefe. So overall, I would probably give them a B overall. But under Keefe, an A. So anybody who skips to the end is just going to see Cab sitting there. They're going to go, that's certified Angus beef, right? No, it's Toronto Maple Leafs. So, but certified Angus beef or certified Alberta beef. There you go. So a B overall. Under Keefe, I give them an A. And under Babcock, a C minus, which tells you this is a team that needed a coaching change. The Montreal Canadiens. Now, Toronto right now is on pace for 97 points. They had 100 last year, so that's a 3-point drop. Montreal Canadiens have 93 points. Last year they had 96. That'd be a 3-point drop for them if they do hit 93 points. Overall, I would say a C plus for Montreal. Just overall, I would give them a C plus on how they've performed this year to this point. Did they end up getting a playoff spot? It projects out that they should. But that being said, Tampa Bay's kind of sitting out there waiting. The Washington Capitals, 124 points is where they're projected to go. They had 104 last year. That would be an improvement of 20. I don't see how I can give the Capitals anything less than an A plus right now. They've been absolutely fantastic, phenomenal. It's intimidating to think about just how good these guys can be. And then, of course, the question mark that raises its head at that point, or the question mark that comes up at that point is, but in the playoffs, what happens when these guys hit the playoffs? I don't know the answer to that. It's going to be interesting. The Islanders are on pace for 112 points. Last year they had 103, so that would be an improvement of 9. And overall for this half of the season, I don't see how I can't give them an A. I don't see how I can't. They're on pace for 112 points. So, really, I don't see how I can give them anything less than an A. You could argue an A+, but an A. It'd be an A+ if it didn't look like they were coming down off of that really great run they had near the start of the year. It has looked like they're coming down off of that over the last couple of weeks. So we'll see if that continues. Pittsburgh, 106 points. They had 100 last year. that would be a 6-point improvement. I'm going to give Pittsburgh the same grade I gave the Capitals, an A+. They have gone through injuries, and Hornqvist is back in tonight's game as an example, and Pittsburgh has just been absolutely fantastic. And I'm intimidated to think of just how good they're going to be when Crosby gets healthy and you've got a pretty darn healthy roster out there. It's never going to be 100%. I don't get the feeling Pittsburgh's ever going to have 100% of the roster out there, but pretty solid result overall. Philadelphia, 104 points. Last year, they had 82. That would be an improvement of 22. Again, that's projected 104 points. I honestly, and these are going to be high grades because these are all the teams in the playoffs. Given where they were last year, I have to give Philadelphia an A. Given where they were last year. So for Montreal fans saying, hey, why did we get a C+? Because they're projected to lose points. And there's things with Montreal that are causing them issues, and they're projected to have the lowest points of any team that I've looked at so far. Philadelphia, 104 points. That's ridiculous. And that's why if you're in the Metro, good luck. Because it's going to be tough. If Philadelphia can keep up that pace, it is going to be really tough to get into the top 4 in that division. You could have 4 teams with more than 100 points in the Metro division alone. Which, just to put it into perspective, right now you can project 1 in the Atlantic, 2 in the Central, and none in the Pacific. None. So there you go. Carolina, 99 points is where they're projected to go. They got 98 last year. So that'd be improvement of 1. Solid B overall for the Carolina Hurricanes. They are exactly where their fans hope they would be. They're better than I thought they would be. I had a feeling they might drop out. They still could. That's the thing. They still technically could because here's Florida, 94 points. 86 last year. They're on pace to get 8 more points. That 94 would bump Montreal out, who are projected to hit 93. Florida, considering everything they've gone through and where they've been, I'll give them a B. I'm tempted to give them a B- because of the amount of lead changes that were going on in games early in the season, but they seem to have got that tamped down. So I'm giving them a B overall, but that's because they're improving by 8 points. If they do get to 94, they'd make the playoffs, and a pretty solid result. Columbus, this is where it gets tricky. It's where it gets really tricky, because Columbus fans are going to say, hey, we got a lot of injuries. I would answer that with there are a lot of injuries, but the record before those injuries was middling. So the record was middling. They had 98 points last year. They're on pace for 10 points less. I'll give them a C+ overall because they are a little bit above where I thought they would be. C to me is you're where I thought you'd be kind of thing. You're not exceeding. C+ means pretty good effort. Things are going pretty well. B means really well. And A is just absolute excellence. So, Columbus, I have at C+. Buffalo's tricky. So they're on pace for 86 points, which would be a disappointment. And yet last year they had 76. So they're still on pace for 10 more points than they had all of last season. So Buffalo's in a good spot. Kind of, sort of. They're not out of it. We know they're not out of it. They're not that far behind Montreal, and again, a couple losses by Montreal, a couple of wins by Buffalo, and those projections change. But for me, Buffalo has, after that slow start, definitely slowed down, or fast start. They had the fast start, they've slowed down, and they're a C+ for me overall. Tampa's on pace for 94 points. See, that's the thing. We all talk about Tampa. They suck this year. They're done. They're on pace for 94 points, and we can all agree they haven't reached their top point yet. They haven't reached that pinnacle. And yet, I'm going to slap them with a C- because of expectation. These guys were supposed to be the best team in the league again this year. Now, I said I didn't think they'd be the best team in the league because repeating as President's Trophy winners is difficult. I didn't think this was coming. They would lose 34 points off last year. 34 if they keep up this pace. And yet they still could potentially make the playoffs with a 34-point drop. The scary thing is if these guys are underdogs in the playoffs, watch out. If these guys have no pressure and everybody's like, these guys suck now, look out. They could absolutely be very, very dangerous. The Rangers, they project for 89 points. Last year they had 78, which would be an improvement of 11 points. And I'm going to be generous. I'm going to be generous and give them a B-. Sure, B-. You know why? Because this is the youngest team in the league. They weren't supposed to be here. This wasn't supposed to be happening. They weren't supposed to be within shouting distance. Not yet. Next year's supposed to be the year. Lundqvist has been good at times. He's been iffy at others. And Georgiev, it looks like, is going to be their starter. So for the New York Rangers, I think this has been a mixed bag of season overall. And yet they're still technically in that race. I don't think they stay in it for much longer, but they're still technically in it. Ottawa, 77 points is where they're projected to end up. If they do end up with 77, they are projected to end up ahead of 1, 2, 3, 4 other teams. They could finish 26th or 27th in the league and disappoint some people by finishing that high. That's where we're at. They had 64 points last year. This would be a 13-point improvement. And honestly, a 13-point improvement, that's a solid B for me. Now, they've had some horrible games, and they've had some losing streaks in there. But my God, these guys are going to be close to 500. I know it's NHL 500. You got the 3-point games. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams that currently sit below 500 in the entire National Hockey League out of 31 teams. 500 is... It's this ridiculous total now, and 500 just means you win as many as you lose. But because of the fact that overtime losses don't count as losses, a team may appear to be 500 when they're really not. But if you try to say, well, they've only won, say, 20 out of 45, somebody else will pipe up and go, yeah, but they lost 6 of those in overtime, so they're over 500. And there you have the NHL 500. But for Ottawa, regardless of how they get there, this has been a really good run. New Jersey's been a D overall. They've just been bad. It's been a miserable run. Subban started to kind of look better the last couple of weeks, but their defenseman last night in overtime auditioning for a spot on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Look, I could put it in the net, and I did it. See what I did? And for New Jersey, it just doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot better. The record's been better since Hall left town. That may very well continue, but I can't see them finishing much higher than that 72 points they had last year. So overall, it's been a really poor season. D is for disaster, D is for doom, D is for devastation. There's a lot. Detroit. Big D, right? So Dallas. Detroit, how can I give them anything other than an F? And I'm sorry, because I don't normally give out Fs, but at pace for 45 points, which would be a drop of 29 from last year where they had 74. What the hell? They're bad. They shouldn't be this bad. 45 points? Dear Lord. So it's official. Yzerman tearing it all down with the visions of winning the draft lottery and drafting first. We'll see how things go. Yeah. So that's your Eastern Conference right there. You've got one fail. You've got, well, technically 2 fail. It depends on the class. Sometimes the class of D isn't really a fail. Most of them it was, but some of them it wasn't. But yeah, there you go. D and an F there, and the rest of them, pretty decent grades minus Tampa there. St. Louis, 118 points, 99 last year, so that'll be an improvement of 19 points. Honestly, I'm going to go ahead and throw them an A+ as well, because this has been a great run. From a team that went to the Stanley Cup last year and won it. It would be absolutely forgivable if they were having a poor first half of the season. I wouldn't have graded them nearly as harshly. But you know what? This has been a great run. Colorado, 106 points is what they're on pace for. They had 90 points last year, so that'd be an improvement of 16. I'll give them an A. See, I'm a nice grader. I would have been a terrible teacher. Would have been, Shannon, all your kids got A's. It's because they're great kids. Shut up. How does that sound? So, yeah, Colorado, an A. I don't see any reason not to give them an A. There have been injury problems. They powered through them. And I know they lost last night, but I'm not worried about last night. This is over the entire half. Winnipeg, 97 points is what they're on pace for. Last year they had 99. So that'd be a drop of 2 points. Considering we all left them for dead after all the defense left, and then Buffalo decided, I'm not going to show up. Really, honestly, I don't see any reason I can't give Winnipeg an A as well. So, the Central, I'm giving A's to everybody who's top 3. Same with the Metro, I'm giving everybody A's. Toronto would have got an A if it was just for their work under Sheldon Keefe. So, there's that. For Winnipeg, it's been a pretty good run. Again, considering what they were supposed to be. This was supposed to be the year they fell apart. So, Pacific's leaders, Arizona, 97 points. They had 86 last year. That would be an improvement of 11 points. I will give them an A as well, because, honestly, I don't see any reason why I can't. I still have concerns about their offense. I know they got Taylor Hall. That's going to help. I do still have concerns about their ability to put the puck in the net, but they've proven me wrong to this point in the season by being first in the division. And, yeah, they get an A for me. Vegas. Vegas is on pace for 92 points. Last year they had 93, so that would be a drop of 1 point. And I'm going to give Vegas a C+. Honestly, they kind of remind me of Tampa. More was expected. That 93 points last year, that was low compared to what people thought they should be. And there was some expectation to get back into that 109-point range from year one. They're not there. They have good games, they have poor games, and they aren't really getting themselves on track. So for me, I give them a C+, because there have been some good moments, but I can't grade them any higher than that. Calgary, they're on pace for 97 points. Last year they had 107, so that would be a drop of 15. But considering everything they've gone through, I'm not going to split it between coaches, because this was a different situation. I'm going to give them a B. All the Bill Peters stuff, everything else that's gone on around this team, and they've just gotten better. And now, with a new coach, it looks like new lines means better results. So even though they're on pace to drop 15 points from where they were last year, they were on pace to drop a heck of a lot more than that as recently as 6 weeks ago. So for the Flames, it's getting better. And it's getting better quickly. So for anybody who thinks Calgary's out of this in terms of winning the division, you may have felt that way a few weeks ago. I would think right now you may think a little differently. Dallas, 95 points. They had 93 last year. They're on pace to be 2 points better. And honestly, I don't know how to grade this. See, if I was grading the first 9 games, it's a D. If I'm grading the next 18 games, it's an A. If I'm grading the ones since then, it's B minus. The Dallas Stars do frustrate me in that there's scoring there. There's players that know how to score, and there's a lot of good parts to the team. But it does it add up every game? No. Does it add up often enough that I'm happy? Not really. So maybe I'm grading them harsher than others would. Maybe I'm being kinder. I don't know. But I give them a B minus. Edmonton. Oh, Edmonton. Edmonton's, again, the first quarter, A. Pretty sure I gave them an A for that first quarter. A, B plus, I would think, at the lowest. But with where they're at and with what's gone on, and just the fact that McDavid and Draisaitl have had this fantastic start to the season and they haven't been able to maintain their spot, that as soon as McDavid and Draisaitl are scoring kind of became regular everyday scoring, they've dropped. I give them a C+. I don't see how I can give them higher than that. I would like to, but I can't. Minnesota, they have 90 points currently. They don't have 90 points currently, Shannon. They don't. Nobody has 90 points currently. If they had 90 points currently in less than 45 games, we'd be having discussions about how the NHL truly rigs things. They've won 45 out of 40 games, and that's what we're doing this year. So yeah, they're on pace for 90 points. They had 83 last year. That'd be an improvement of 7 points. These guys weren't supposed to be this good. They got off to a horrible start to the season. But overall, I'll give them a B+. And I'll say this. I would not be surprised to see Minnesota in a playoff spot And if you're a Minnesota fan, that might be very frustrating because you might have the mind that, hey, we need to fix this. And if we make the playoffs and go out in the first round again, nothing's going to get fixed. There are other fan bases that would totally understand and identify with that, but they do look pretty good right now. Nashville's on pace for 93 points. They had 100 last year. That'd be a drop of 7 points. Nashville, and again, this is where for Edmonton things get tricky. Edmonton's on pace for 88. They've played more games than these other teams below them. Nashville, their overall record, I'll give them a C plus overall. I would have given them a C minus for certain parts of the year, an A for the early part of the year, and recently probably back up to a B. So yeah, C plus makes sense. Nashville, and we'll see how things go for them in the second half. Again, we have teams that are outside the playoffs here. So these are your 8 playoff teams. These are teams outside the playoffs here. Teams outside the playoffs here. And there are definitely some teams on this side that I could see moving over to that side in the second half. Maybe I'll do that as well. Vancouver, 91 points is what they're on pace for. They had 81 last year. That would be an improvement of 10. Considering injuries and team being young and expectations being as they are, I'll give them a B minus. I would love to give them better, but they had November. November did happen. It was a thing. It was real. So if you're a Canucks fan, you're like, man, I'm really glad November doesn't exist. It does. It happened. I can understand that blind spot. And it drags them down. If not for November, they'd probably be a B+. But November definitely hurt them. But Vancouver, there's a lot of good things going on right now. There's a lot of reason for optimism. The only concern we may have is well, do they keep Markstrom? Like, there's some concerns there, but there's nothing that's fatal for this team right now. Chicago, they're on pace for 80 points. Last year they had 84. That'd be a drop of 4 points. It depends from week to week. I'm going to give them a C. It depends from week to week, though. Right now, they look pretty good. They beat the Islanders last night. So what's going to happen in the next game? We don't know. They still have that core. They still have some really, really good players. But it's the rest of the team. They need some upgrades. They need something. So for Chicago, I give them a C. And we will see whether or not in the second half they turn it around. Anaheim, they're on pace for 78 points. They had 80 last year. That'd be a drop of 2. I have to say, after that really great start they've had, that's a C minus for me. They had that great 6-2 start, and it's just completely evaporated. Everything's fallen apart since then. They get the win over Vegas last night, but they're still sitting well back of a playoff spot, and they have to get themselves back above NHL 500 to even think about it. So it's been a long, winding road for Anaheim this year, and it hasn't taken them good places for the most part. Kings, 74 points. They were a team that had 71 last year, so they're on pace to improve by 3 points. I'll give LA C minus. I know, I'm nice, right? I don't give them a failing grade, even though that's where they're at. But it's because we didn't expect a whole lot from them. And overall, if they improve by 3 points, at least it's upward movement of some sort. And considering the start they had as well, the start they had was absolutely miserable. It's not too bad. So for the Kings, they're not in a position where they're going to make the playoffs, but still. San Jose, 74 points. Last year they had 101. That'd be a drop of 27. And that's a big old fat F. If I had done this at the end of November, and I had given them an F, San Jose fans would have lost their minds, because in November that team turned it around. We're now almost to the end of December, and all that talk is gone. This team's a disaster. So my letter grade's done. Which teams do I think could make the playoffs that aren't in? I'm going to use my old marker here, and I'm not going to speculate on which ones fall out. Minnesota, absolutely. Nashville, yes. Vancouver. Those are 3 that could jump into this side. Who do they knock out? Right? Because this is where we're in. We're in a league now where there's so many teams that could potentially jump into a playoff spot. Nashville, with that 93-point projection, would be the most logical one to jump over here and cause problems in the playoffs. Now, on the eastern side of things, Florida, absolutely. Tampa Bay, absolutely. And I'll give Buffalo the benefit of the doubt because of the division they play in. And I would love to give Columbus the benefit of the doubt or the Rangers, but I don't see it that way. So we'll see what happens. I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Let me know your letter grades and all that, whether I'm too generous or too harsh. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. It's a fun thing to do. Like I said, I know we haven't technically reached the half yet. It's going to be reached later this week. Next week. But not a whole lot's going to change over the next 6 or 7 days before everybody gets there. And I'd be interested to know your thoughts. So let me know. Hit like and subscribe. And I will talk to you again soon. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. And yes, I will talk to you soon.